There is a new update now. The former neighbor of Joe Biden's accuser, Tara Reade, has now corroborated the sexual assault account. We now have the mother calling into Larry King in 1993, and we have probably three witnesses. One is the brother who said, I remember her saying that he had his hands underneath her clothes. He said, but I don't remember anything else. And that, to me, is consistent. I can't imagine telling your brother all of the gory details on that when it happened. So we have that as a witness. By the way, she's a Democrat. That's something that's important that we never had with Kavanaugh's accuser. She was somebody that was leading the charge to get Kavanaugh to not be, or any of the Republicans to not be, the Supreme Court justice. So she is on record as an advocate against the Supreme Court nominee of Donald Trump. Tara Reade is an active Democrat. Well, so is the former neighbor. The former neighbor, they have checked all of her social media. She has constantly been a fan of Joe Biden and constantly been a Democrat. She is wildly anti-Trump, so she doesn't seem to have an axe to grind with Joe Biden. So her name is Linda Lacasse. She's a Biden supporter, and she said that Reade told her about the alleged assault in detail in 1995 or 1996. She said, I know this happened because I remember talking to her about it. They were apparently sitting out on the porch one night of her house. They were neighbors. And she said that we would sit out on the porch sometimes and we would just talk. And she's a victim of abuse. And she brought up this abuse that she had. And apparently Reade then said, this happened to me. And she told her the whole story. She said, I remember her saying there was this person she was working for and she idolized him. He kind of put her up against a wall. He put his hand up her skirt and he inserted his fingers in her. She felt like she was assaulted, you think? She really didn't feel that there was anything she could do about it. I remember she got very emotional as she told the story. She was crying. She was upset. And the more she talked about it, the more she started crying. I remember saying that she needed to file a police report. She said she doesn't recall whether Reade supplied any other details like the location or anything else. I don't remember all the details. I just remember the skirt. I remember the fingers. I remember she was devastated. That sounds completely consistent and worth looking into. Doesn't condemn Joe Biden, but is least worth looking into. There should be some sort of investigation. I don't know how you're going to investigate something this old, but it should be done.
Yeah, and to point out, Glenn, here, this is a more recent incident by a considerable margin than when we dealt with Brett Kavanaugh. It is a situation where we have now 4 people who are witnesses. We had only 2, and then the mom, we now have kind of saying at least something went on. We don't know what it was. So that would be a 3rd. And then the 4th here is this neighbor, again, who seems to be still a Joe Biden supporter even after the sexual assault, which is a considerable amount of dedication to the candidate.
Listen to this. She said, coming forward to support an allegation against the Democratic presidential nominee may have repercussions for me. I have no political axe to grind, and I intend on voting for Biden. I personally am a Democrat, a very strong Democrat. I'm for Biden regardless, but I have to come out and say this. That's really really strong.
And look, now, I don't think this is proof it happened, because look, there's a presidential nomination on the line. Obviously, Biden is vulnerable. I have no idea if these people are coming out and making it up. They may be, but we do know that this was considered absolute proof when James Comey wrote notes about a meeting with Donald Trump. When you say something at the time, and we look back 30 years later, that's just absolute proof in the eyes of the left. I don't think that's a fair standard because you don't know what the motivations are for someone doing this. But we do know that it's massively more evidence than ever came up from anything to do with Kavanaugh.
When it first happened with Kavanaugh, we all said, look, this is disturbing. We should look into it. We didn't condemn him. We said we should look into it. When he testified and Blasey Ford testified that day, we went into it thinking she could be very, very credible. By the end of it, and listening to him and her, we discovered which one was more credible or not. Eventually, everything Blasey Ford fell apart. Everything she said all fell apart. This might as well, but it should be looked into when you have. Here's another person that is coming out now. She worked as a legislative staffer in Senator Jack O'Connell's office in California, another Democrat. She said she and Reade worked alongside each other from 94 to 96. She said she remembers Reade complaining at the time about being mistreated by her former employee. Reade said she had been sexually harassed by her former boss while she was in D.C., and as a result of her voicing her concerns to a supervisor, she was let go. She was fired. What I do remember, Sanchez said yesterday, is reassuring her that nothing like that would ever happen to her in our office, that she was in a safe place, free from any sexual harassment. She does remember that the employer Sanchez recalls of Reade was Biden. Sanchez praised Reade for speaking out. It takes great courage and strength to come forward. Sanchez said in a statement, it's much easier to keep silent. However, I understand the duty that we have as women to share our story regardless of who the perpetrator may be. All reasoned.
Yeah. Look, it is more than you got for any of these accusations that we went through with Kavanaugh or, several other figures on the right. This is stuff that, look, we should step back and say this, that it is not impossible to arrange a few people, some of which that you're closely related to back you on a story that's false. It's very possible that it's false. I don't know that there's enough evidence. There's a lot of questions in her story. Some of it sounds very questionable to me. It's something that, as we've always said, when someone comes forward with a serious accusation like that, they should be taken seriously. However, I can't get over just the double standard of the media. And when I look at this and I say, there's two standards here, the Kavanaugh standard and the way they're treating Joe Biden right now. I think the way they're treating Joe Biden right now is closer to the way they should do it, because they shouldn't necessarily just convict him and destroy his life like they did Kavanaugh.
Destroy his life. Yep.
As Steven Crowder mentioned, there is a double standard here. The Kavanaugh standard is so horrific to me. I want nothing to do with it. The Biden one doesn't seem to be exactly right either, considering we've now gone, Glenn, 33 days since this allegation, and Joe Biden, despite dozens of interviews, has never been asked about it. That's incredible. There's no way to dismiss that other than massive media bias and complete journalistic malpractice. There's no other way to explain that.
Let me give you one more thing, I think, in Tara Reade's favor. Things like this change your life. So what did she do? Reade went to work in the domestic violence unit for the King County prosecutor in Seattle. She received her law degree from Seattle University School of Law in 2004. So she went back to school. She later served as legal services director for the Snohomish County Center for Battered Women. This woman had a change. She went back to school after the incident. She gets her law degree and goes to work to help fight abusers and battered women. That too sounds consistent. And again, there's no axe to grind here. It's not like if she was a Trump supporter, I would be skeptical. But seeing that she is a strong Democrat who has always liked Joe Biden, idolized him, it's hard to find a reason why someone would go out and just destroy their lives.